Great. Okay, good. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about diversifying talent pipelines. And for those that may not know who I am, my name is Dean Delpeache. I'm the Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition here at Fiix Software. We're a medium-sized software organization in Toronto, and we build software for the maintenance and asset management industry. We have clients globally, and we're really redefining and disrupting what we call computerized maintenance management systems and software really looks like in the industry. And feel free to check us out at fixsoftware.com. My role at Fiix is I have two roles. So number one, I'm responsible for talent acquisition. So all recruitment and selection, the strategy that goes behind that. And I have a team of recruiters that work with me to make sure that we bring in the most qualified talent. And then on the flip side, another half of my role is I'm responsible and accountable for our diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging strategy. And I report into our senior leaders with regards to that whole strategy. And that all flips all the way out to the board of directors in our company. So that's kind of my role, and I'm appreciative to the lens that I have within the company and how I can influence decisions that happen here. Now, I want to start off this by really looking at this more from a story. And the truth is when I'm done speaking, the story does continue into what I call an internal mobility story, but I want to look at recruitment. And so this is our friend O'Neill, and he's going to carry us through this whole entire presentation. And O'Neill comes from a marginalized and racialized community, and O'Neill just lost his job, okay? And what he's decided to do is go back and educate himself to become a part of the working community again. And what we want to ensure is that O'Neill has the fairest and most equitable opportunity to be hired amongst many other candidates in his local marketplace. And so I want to start off by saying when we're talking about hiring and we're using the word diversity in terms of hiring, and we usually use the statement hiring diverse candidates, what we're really talking about is creating equitable procedures in the recruitment process to reduce bias for applicants within a marginalized group. And that can include gender, it can include age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, disability, and religion. But a lot of times when we use the word, we want to hire diverse candidates, it's almost comes across as though we want to hire candidates that are inferior to a dominant race, right? Which is not the case at all. We are hiring humans. And I want to humanize this because it's important to understand that. But we have to also understand that we've also created recruitment structures and processes that typically cater to a very Eurocentric view in Canada. And what we want to do is ensure that we create equitable processes for all people. So I'll give you an example. Like one term I don't like to use because it's not the right terminology is a lot of times, especially if you're working for an agency, the employer might say to you, hey, I want you to find me a candidate who has Canadian experience. That is the biggest garbage I've ever heard in my life. Let's throw those words away because when we say Canadian experience, what we're doing is we're buying into this philosophy that someone's experience from overseas or wherever they're from is invalid, and that's just wrong. As a candidate, candidates need to be informed and instructed on how to present their previous experience in a contextual manner so that, for example, if they worked in a company similar to Loblaw in whatever country they are, they need to be able to contextualize that to let the employer know that it's similar to how Loblaw operates. And so we typically, as employers, sometimes create these structures like you must have Canadian experience. And what it does is it causes inequity and it causes a lack of fairness. And so as recruiters on this call, we want to establish fairness and equity in the hiring process. And that's what everybody wants. I want to be honest with you. I identify as Black, and all I'm looking for is fairness and equity in the recruitment process so that um, um, I can get hired as well as many other people. And I can tell you simple stories, okay? And I might as well, because I have 25 minutes to talk to you. So let me tell you one simple story from my own personal background. I remember I was interviewing at an organization, which was a large financial institution in Canada. And I was interviewing there while I was interviewing at Fiix. And when I had interviewed there, it was between myself and another candidate. And at the end of my final interview process, the hiring manager, who was a wonderful lady, said to me, "We would like to hire you." And she said, I didn't even ask her why. She said, "We want to hire you above this other candidate for two reasons." Here they were. Number one, you're pursuing your master's, and we think that as you get into our organization, that's going to be very, very important to have, and will take you different places. Great, fantastic. The second reason was because, and I'm going to quote this, she said, "You're Black, and we have a hiring initiative and quota to hire Black talent to meet some government regulated rules." Okay. So she came across from a very, she wasn't being mean or rude and she's an extremely nice person, but I don't want to be a token hire. Don't hire me because I'm Black. I want to be hired because I'm qualified and because I have the skills necessary to do the job. And every person of color and every person who comes from marginalized groups, I believe, wants fairness and equity. So with that said, let's talk about the business case quickly for diversity. So what we've come to understand is that companies in the top quartile of gender diversity were 15% more likely to have financial returns that were above their national industry median. And so McKinsey in 2015 put out this report called Diversity Matters. I encourage you can Google search it and read it for yourself. And what they also discovered is that companies in the top quartile of racial and ethnic diversity were 35% more likely to have financial returns above the national industry median. They also discovered that companies with 10% or higher gender and ethnic racial diversity on management teams and boards in the US, for example, had an EBIT that was 1.1% higher, and in the UK, it was 5.8% higher. And then after, they also recognized that companies in the bottom quartile for both gender and ethnicity and race were statistically less likely to achieve above average financial returns than the companies that were in the data set. And so this study, and the goal of the study, was to prove that diversity in our organizations really, really matter. And we know this, that in our local marketplaces, one of the things that they report is that 33% of companies believe there's a skills gap. And so there's a significant problem when it comes to finding qualified talent. And I'm telling you, friends, if we open up our pipelines a little bit more, we can find quality talent that can work in our organizations. So let's take a step-by-step systematic approach to how we can do that. Let's start first by considering our job description. So let's start with this. Male applicants will apply to roles even if they only have 60 to 70% of the qualifications. Many of you might know that. And some of you may also know that female applicants will typically apply to positions if they know they possess 90 to 100% of the qualifications. So what does that mean? That means that some of our job descriptions, what's going to happen is you may have females looking at our job descriptions and saying, that's not for me, even though they actually may have the qualifications, but because they didn't see, because maybe not 100% of the qualifications appealed or were in their wheelhouse, they might not apply, whereas males will be constantly applying. And so what we have to do is we have to optimize are job descriptions. And how do you do that? So let's consider a couple things. So maybe work with your hiring managers as recruiters, or if you're from an agency, work with the hiring managers that you work for and ensure that you have must-haves and clarify that on your job description. So sometimes you could separate. You could have must-haves and you could have nice-to-haves on your job description, or you could just have a job description that just literally has the must-haves so that people really, really know this is all you are looking for. Also, you can consider gender neutral wording, right? So instead of having more words that are more masculine or more feminine, you can, have more gender neutral words. So you can consider using tools such as Textio or just kind of look to your job descriptions. And instead of using words like strong leader, consider using words like an exceptional leader, right? So make your job descriptions appealing, because you got to think about this as a recruiter, that a lot of times, especially if you don't have a brand name like Home Depot, for example, a lot of times, a lot of people don't know your companies. And so the first time that they ever come in contact with you is at your job description. And so you want to ensure that your job description is optimized, that it reflects hiring for diverse talent. Now let's go even a step further. And something you could consider is having what I call an equity statement. So let's go through this statement. It says, we recognize that people come with a wealth of experience and talent beyond just the technical requirements of a job. If your experience is close to what you see listed here, please still consider applying. Diversity of experience and skills combined with passion is a key to innovation and excellence. Therefore, we encourage people from all backgrounds to apply to our positions. Please let us know if you require accommodations. So if people need accessibility please let us know during the interview process. So this statement sits on all of our job descriptions at Fiix because we want to make sure that candidates feel invited into the recruitment process when they apply. Another thing is that we actually track how candidates feel about this. And I remember one interview I personally did in particular, a candidate specifically said to me, and she was a female identified individual. She said that she felt that she said, listen, the reason why I applied, is because I saw this on your job description and it made me comfortable to apply. And that spoke volumes to me because I wanted to validate, are we doing the right thing? And so you can easily do that through your interview process, validate, but these things are cool tools to help assist on your job description. So let's move on. Number 2, let's talk about pipelining for diversity. So, many of us, we use job boards. We use various networks, depending on if you're looking for, development talent, you might use GitHub. Depending on what you're using, we use various networks and we also use direct sourcing. I come from the old school days. If you got any old school recruiters there, where we actually used to pick up the phone and call somebody in their office and try to appeal to them. Now, for the most part, most people use LinkedIn Recruiter and whatnot, but this is kind of what we do internally as a corporate organization. We use our referral network and because. And I'm very proud to say we've built up a wonderful, diverse organization. What we find is a lot of the referrals that come in are people that come from marginalized backgrounds, which it's fantastic for us here at Fiix. I know there's some situations where you have more homogeneous company organizations where the referrals are typically the people from the same network, so the referral network doesn't work as good. So it could go either way. We use events, we use conferences to reach out to different people, third-party vendors, such as the recruitment firms that are here. And I know that some are focused on diversity. But I want to talk to you about 2 different areas, and especially to those that are corporate recruiters here on the call. And the first one is partnerships and networks. There are some wonderful partnerships that you can create with organizations to help you to find more diverse talent. One partnership that comes to mind is the Black Professionals in Technology Network. Some of you may have heard of that partnership, where they actually have a newsletter that goes out to about 5,000 Black professionals with jobs from their partners. And I'm grateful that we are a partner and we can list our opportunities whenever necessary. You also have other partnerships. So, for example, one partnership we work with is a partnership called Npower. And Npower, what they do is they have a training and education curriculum for technical support. And they bring youth from marginalized communities into this program, and then they can be hired. And we've had the opportunity, our senior manager of technical support has had the opportunity to go and speak to this group. We've done interviews on site with people to fuel them into our pipeline. And so I want to encourage you to think about partnerships, because they bring diverse talent into your talent pipeline. Another thing I want you to consider is maximizing your digital channels and really organically showcasing the talent through your digital channels like Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever ones work for you. I don't know which ones do, but maximize your digital channels. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. All right. Now, I want to talk about the two in the pool methodology, because I believe this is a fantastic methodology for hiring. So now you've pipelined, you're getting in tons of candidates, let's say, from marginalized communities, but now you want to ensure that they have a fair chance in the process. How do you do it? This was a research study done by Stephanie K. Johnson and David Heckman and Elsa Chan. And I had the privilege of speaking to Stephanie K. Johnson about this study. It was fantastic. Actually, I spoke to her and I wanted her to come on this call. Today she's celebrating her wedding anniversary, so she couldn't. But in this study, here's what they found. They found that if you have one woman amongst men in any recruitment pipeline, you are going to, and also they also found with a marginalized candidate or racialized candidate, they found there is 0% of hiring that person. But when you have at least two women or two marginalized candidates in any pipeline, the odds of hiring goes up, okay, by 79.14%. Isn't that amazing? Okay, and that's for female. For marginalized candidates, the effect was it goes up by 193.72%. Fantastic. And so when you have more than three, it goes up even higher. And your finalist pipeline could be 8 candidates. But if you have at least 2 women or 2 marginalized candidates or more, the chances of hiring a marginalized candidate goes up significantly. And if I had time, I would love to tell you about the actual study they did on the Rooney Rule. For those that don't know, the NFL has a rule that they have to have at least one Black or one marginalized candidate in their talent pool when they're hiring coaches. And I would love to tell you about that study, but for the sake of time, I'm going to have to save it for another time. Okay, so this is something that you as a recruiter can incorporate to really, really create more equity in your recruitment process. Okay. Now let's look at interviewing. How can we create more equity in the interview process? Number one, resume review. Okay. Now there are different things that we could do. So, for example, there's AI tools that are out there that are there to remove names so that you could reduce bias. You could use something like that, or you can consider, if you don't have the money or the budget for an AI tool, maybe having multiple people review your shortlist to ensure that you are really, really hiring the most qualified person in that shortlist, or bringing the most qualified people from that shortlist into your interview process. You can consider simulations and situational exercises. So in software development, we do pairing exercises with candidates so we can see how they actually code on the job. Do they ask questions while they're coding? What do they do to simulate an environment such as our environment in the office? or now virtually. You can, for sales, you can do presentations, you can do case studies, we do technical testing. But these things, I want you to think about it with me, these things give candidates the opportunity to showcase their skills. And that's what's key. And sometimes it's not about how good they do on the test, it's about their approach, because sometimes candidates might score low from an examination standpoint, but we look at how they do their testing, and we will a lot of times bring candidates through our process still based upon how they approach the simulation, or how they approach the technical testing. Structured interviewing. So we at Fiix have moved from what I would call an unstructured interview situation to a structured situation where what we do is we ask candidates very specific questions, and they're asked similar questions where we actually grade them. And they're graded up based on our internal competencies and our values, and they're also based on skill-based questions. And so at the end of every interview, every candidate gets a grade almost coming out. And why is that important to me? Because if there's a woman in our process that scores 10 out of 10 overall, but there's a male in our process that scored 8 out of 10, and the interviewers want to go forward with the male, I can now take data and go to them and say, look, that doesn't make sense. You've got to give me a case as to why you want to hire that person. And that is what your recruitment and your hiring teams need. They need someone who can go in, not as a recruiter, but as an advisor. And that's what I empower my recruiters to be able to do, be talent advisors, so that they can instruct and give factual based information to our hiring teams. And then after, the last thing I'm going to mention is diversifying your hiring teams. I'm going to give you a great example. We have a role that we've been looking at we've been hiring for, and what ended up happening is at the final stage of the interview, there's a panel, and the panel was originally, because the hiring manager asked, was to be made up of these 3 men in that panel, and what ended up happening, and as a part of my role, is I said to that hiring manager, we cannot have that. We actually must include a woman in that process. And so, without giving you all the details, we eventually were able to have 2 men and 1 woman in that process, and as the hiring team for the panel. And our 2 finalists were a male and a female. And I'm going to tell you something that's really funny. What we discovered is during the process of interviews prior to the panel, that the males had scored the female at a 3 out of 4. But as soon as the female had an interview, the hiring manager, was a female, scored her 4 out of 4. And literally what we find is we found that type of situation where we're finding that males at times may score females lower. And so we had to create equity in our process in interviewing by making sure that women are a part of our interviewing process. So it's important to diversify your hiring teams because it lowers bias in the process. All right, back to supporting your digital channels. I love this thing from Everlane, and this is really more speaking to employment branding, right? So we have 1 founder and 46 CEOs be the 47th, and I think this is a fantastic slide, right? Because what we need to do as organizations is we need to craft exciting employment value propositions for people to apply to our jobs through different channels. And using your social media is an amazing channel to get in diverse talent. You can highlight your teams, you can highlight your mission on your career page, and send your people from Instagram right back to your career page. You can use social media to engage teams. So look, if you notice on this post, someone through Instagram actually applied to the position. And so this is a way to really, really engage and create more diverse pipelines and channels into your organization. I could speak on employment branding for a whole session on itself, and how you can do that. But I just want to highlight how employment branding is important as an organization to get diverse talent. Now, I've been presenting this conversation quite a bit over the last little while. And remember, we're still considering our friend O'Neill from the beginning. And O'Neill, right, who lost his job, went to education. Now imagine O'Neill coming through our fair and equitable pipeline, right? And this next slide I'm going to show to you is what I call bonus data. No one else has seen this slide, and I want to present this slide to you, right? Because you came in here, you paid your money's worth. I want to give you some bonus data, which is this. This is what you want to consider from a measurement standpoint. So here are some things that we measure to let us know if diversity is truly coming into our pipeline. Number one, we have a D&I survey that all applicants receive when they apply, and it's completely optional. It's not associated to their candidate profile, but it gives us an understanding of the demographics coming in. And a lot of people think that, oh, if we put like a survey asking people about their information, they're not going to want to apply because they think that they're not going to get the job. Let me tell you something. Our survey results is we have found that out of all of our applicants, 83% of all applicants actually fill this information out. This is crucial data for us, right? Also, we understand where our candidates come from. So when candidates apply, they check and let us know, hey, I saw you either on LinkedIn, Indeed, or I came from a partner, right? And that's how we can track our partnerships working. Also, we can pull reports to let us know what partners, this is tracking partner data, what partners have been submitting candidates to us, right? Because they have their own logins to our applicant tracking system. For software development, we use Codility, and so we can actually look at Codility scores, and we know, right, for example, how many females are coming into our pipeline and actually doing our test, and how many males. And I think the last time we checked, we tracked somewhere about 65% male and then 35% female coming into our pipeline, and we can understand how that tracks. Looking at net promoter scores. So when a candidate is declined, we actually send them a survey to find out if they would refer someone to Fiix and ask them other questions, because we want to know, are we doing a good job in terms of candidate experience? And then after interview evaluations, just like I said, now that we have structured interviews, we can actually see how candidates are faring within our process. And some future measurements when it comes to diversity measures. This is not time to hire and how, those measurements, are fine. They're great, but that's not in this conversation what I care about. I'm looking at how do we track diversity in the recruitment pipeline. So some future measurements is job description tracking. So literally, I can track whether candidates appreciate the diversity or the equity statement. I can track whether they feel that our job descriptions are gender neutral enough. So those are some future measurements I'm considering. Another one is candidate rejection demographic. So for example, when I send out the candidate NPS, I might want to also ask them some demographic questions to understand what candidates are being rejected, so that, again, we can use this as a business case to make sure that we are equitable. And guess what? When we do these things, we have candidates like O'Neill, who was down in his luck but decided to go become re-educated, come into our process, become happy people. Right? Because now O'Neill, right, is now hired into our organization. So I say all of this to say this. Imagine the possibilities, friends, right? Imagine the possibilities. If we can make our recruitment processes more equitable to support diversity, we are going to change our boardrooms from looking like this to our boardrooms looking like this. Isn't this a fantastic picture of inclusion and equity? Everybody with their voice, from age to ethnicity, to culture, to gender, all having their say around the table. Listen, I want to say thank you so much for being a part of this presentation. I would love for all of you, if you're not connected with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or feel free. I just started Twitter. And so, I'm trying to build up my followers. So feel free to follow me on Twitter, and I'll follow you back.